You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Welcome to Business of Drinks. I'm Scott Rosenbaum.
And I'm Erica Ducey. Today, we're talking with one of the most connected entrepreneurs in the beverage industry, Danny Stepper. He's the co-founder and CEO of LA Libations and also co-founder of Taste Tomorrow Ventures, a new $30 million emerging food and beverage venture fund.
If you're not familiar with LA Libations, they're a self-described next-generation beverage incubator. What that means is they help launch brands and they scale them. They're uniquely positioned to do so as the key innovation partner of the Molson Coors beverage company. And they've also partnered with major retailers like Kroger, Walmart, and Sprouts in a role called Emerging Category Captain. Simply, they bring the most promising new drink brands into the big chains.
Yeah, and Danny's track record is filled with big brand successes. He's helped build Zico coconut water, Core Water, and Body Armor sports drinks. And when it came to Body Armor, he even figured out a way to go head to head with the category leader at the time, which was Gatorade. He managed to break their exclusive distribution deal at major retailers like 7-Eleven, Walmart, and Costco. And by doing that, he essentially opened the floodgates, allowing Body Armor to grow from a $100 million brand all the way to a $1 billion powerhouse.
We also get into what Danny looks for when investing. Why the founders who make it big are both innovative and coachable, and why categories like protein, adult non-alc, and what he describes as a fourth category of alcohol are where retailers are really making more room on the shelves right now. And I was really compelled by this idea of this fourth category, not wine, nor beer, nor spirits, but rather something else, a category where high growth brands like Beatbox and Buzzballs reside.
Danny has built LA Libations into a multi-division powerhouse. It's got its own marketing agency, its own distributor, its own merchandising company, and now it even has its own venture fund making founder-first investments. And he doesn't sugarcoat what it takes to get investment or survive in this business. As he puts it, beverage is a blood sport, but when it works, it's heaven.
So, if you are a drinks founder who wants to understand how to break into top retailers or attract the right kind of strategic partners, or really just avoid the mistakes that kill most startups, this is an episode you will want to listen to until the very end.
So let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Danny Stepper of LA Libations. And now, a word from our sponsor. Is your drinks brand looking to start or expand important distribution?
Whether you're seeking to enter new markets or you're unhappy with a current distributor and desiring a better fit, you should know about Swig Partners.
Founded by industry experts Eric Siegelbaum and Amy Troutmiller, Swig takes the guesswork and the legwork out of distribution strategy. Swig helps brands and distributors find the right fit for long-term relationships and sales success.
US-based importers and distributors should reach out too. With Swig, they can explore new products for free. And brands, you can get $100 off by mentioning Business of Drinks. Find out more at swigpartners.com/business of drinks. That's swigpartners.com/business of drinks.
Danny, welcome to the Business of Drinks.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, thrilled to have you here. So hopping right in, tell me about your background and how you came to found LA Libations.
I'm a beverage guy. My first job out of college, when I had a mountain of college debt and was scared to death, didn't know what to do with my life, I started my career with the Coca-Cola bottler here in LA. And I was a merchandiser. I wore a back belt and a uniform. I met the big truck at the back of the store, and I just went to work and tried to go build a life. And I outworked everybody, and Coke kept rewarding me for it. And so I had a really good run at Coke. I migrated to the Coca-Cola company. And 9 years after I started, I was managing Coke's global business with Costco. They had promoted me 14 times. And, you know, I think the mistake that Coke made was they put me through graduate school. And it was the first time I had to take a breath. And I had this epiphany that I'm an entrepreneur. I want to do things faster and, better and differently at Coke. And so I had a hard time building consensus. So I just go do it myself. That doesn't work in big companies. So it was time for me to go. And my life took a crazy turn. I moved to Europe and became a movie producer. While I was a Coke employee, Adidas, the shoe company, gave me $45 million, me and another guy, to go make some soccer movies, the whole crazy story. And so I had 4 years out of the beverage business in my entire career. And I was living in London and Madrid making movies. And then I said, what am I doing? Like, I miss beverage. And people often have a hard time understanding that, but I did. So I came home and we started LA Libations 15 years ago. And we started as a brokerage. And we really put the broke in brokerage. We couldn't make any money. And the reason we couldn't make any money, it was right as Whole Foods was blowing up. And so we saw these weird healthy and natural trends and people holding their nose and drinking terrible kombucha. And we thought, why don't we take that to traditional retailers that are selling Coke, like Kroger, like Albertsons, like Walmart, customers that we had called on at Coke. And the first customer that we really clicked with was Kroger, and they named us their emerging beverage category captain. Mary Ellen Adcock, who today is the chief merchant at Kroger, named us that. Then Walmart did next. And, that was in 2011, and we've just been doing it ever since. So, so that's how we got here. And I'm happy to tell you more about LA Libations if you want to know about it.
Walk me through each of the divisions briefly, and we'll dive into detail on a couple of them.
So our relationships with retailers, I'll put them up with anyone in the world. They're very unique. They're in the C-suite. And so selling brands to retailers is definitely part of the company's DNA from day one. So that's huge. But as we created our own brands, we started, we're a brand creator, incubator, and accelerator. So we create our own brands, but we also work with early stage founders and sometimes with bigger companies as well to launch their brands. And so for our own brands, we saw that there was all these pick and shovel businesses that we needed to hire and outsource, things like merchandising, things like marketing, distribution. And so over the years, we started bringing those things in-house. So we have our own marketing agency called LA Vibrations. We have our own merchandising company called Relentless, which we recently joint ventured with Advantage Sales and Marketing. So now we can hit 10 stores, we can hit 100,000 stores. We have our own distributor here in LA called High Touch Libations. We have our own route to market. And so all those things are in-house now. And then more things just kind of evolved. And so, we bought Beverage Forum a couple of years ago, which has been just an incredible thing. I like to say, like, in 2025, everything's hard except Beverage Forum. Everybody wants to be on stage. Everybody wants to sponsor it. It's an amazing thing. The industry really needed it. And then, all these brands need capital. So we recently launched Taste Tomorrow Ventures, which is our fund, which is very exciting. We've made 2 investments. So we kind of can do anything that an early stage founder would need. We do that.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to your roots for a second. So merchandising and being a territory manager. I saw something online. It was from a platform that you've worked with, and it was talking about when you worked with this platform, your team had doubled its store visits up to 13 visits per rep per day for territory managers. And I was so curious to hear you talk more about your approach. I mean, 13 accounts a day sounds astounding, but I was curious to hear, like, what is it about your approach or your company's approach that has been so effective in the retail channel?
So, quality placement at retail at the point of purchase, like the things I learned my first year at Coca-Cola Enterprises as a merchandiser, like being in the stores at 4:30 in the morning, that year was probably the most valuable lessons that I've learned to this day, because it all happens at the point of purchase. It's that moment of truth. And there's so many really not sexy things that go into the look of success of what you want your brand to look at, but you have to do the work. And so, when I was a merchandiser for Coke, I would do about 5 stores a day because I was doing Coke and Powerade and Fanta, and I had all these brands. I think what you're referring to is Relentless, and we don't have those huge brands, so you're not like unstacking pallets and pallets and pallets. It's more of a bespoke. I'm going to go find 3 cases in the back room and fill the shelf, so it allows them to get to more stores, more outlets per day. So I think that's what you're referring to. But I think at the end of the day, what everything that I'm trying to do today comes down to what I learned in that first year is like, how do you, where that moment when the consumer interacts with your brand, how do you drive awareness and trial at the point of purchase? That is everything in building a brand.
Yeah. And your company occupies such a unique space. It's more than a merchandiser, more than an accelerator, more than a VC partner. One of the things you mentioned was emerging brand category captain for retailers. I think a lot of people, this will be a new term for them. This was a new term for me. So can you describe what that is and talk about the retailers that you're working with in that capacity?
So I'll tell you a funny story. So when I managed the Costco business for Coke, we got this edict down from our president of Coca-Cola, Sandy Douglas, who happens to now be the CEO of UNFI. But we got this edict down from Sandy that says we have to be the carbonated soft drink category captain at all of our retailers. It can't be Pepsi. It can't be, Dr. Pepper Snapple back then. And so I'm like, oh gosh, like this is not going to be fun. So I went in and met with Craig Jelnick, who I'd built a relationship with at the time. He was the COO. He recently retired as the CEO of Costco. And I said, Craig, I want to be your carbonated sugar water category captain. And we still laugh about it to this day. When I talk to him, he goes, Danny, get the F out of my office. He goes, we don't even manage categories. We manage items at a price. Get out of here. And I said, Craig, I'm not leaving until you say I could do this. I need this. I need this personally, please. And he goes, Danny, he goes, I don't even know what it means. He goes, here. I knight you. And so I went back and sent an email and said, oh my gosh, we're now the category captain at Costco. It didn't really mean that much in Costco. At places like Kroger and Albertsons, for these big companies, to be the category captain is a very, very big deal. They're the ones that do the planograms for the retailers, and they're supposed to be unbiased, but if there's a tiebreaker, they're always, their brands always win and things like that. So when I was meeting with Marilyn Adcock, her job was at Kroger to build a store within a store to compete with Whole Foods. I mean, this is in 2011. And she came from the stores like I did. And she's like, I don't know anything about this. Tell me about this. And I said, well, here's the deal. 50% of the growth is coming from brands and categories that are new. And so your shoppers want new stuff. They're promiscuous. And she goes, oh, so to grow my categories, I just need to bring in all the new stuff. And I go, well, hang on. 98% of these things are going to fail. And she goes, oh my gosh, like I have better odds going to Las Vegas. Like, what do I do? And it just popped into my head. I said, why don't you make me your emerging beverage category captain? And I'll speak for the trees. I'll go meet with all the brands and, I'll kiss all the frogs and bring you the princes. And she said, yes. And we went on Fox News together in Cincinnati. And she said, we're going to out Whole Foods, and we're going to do it with LA Libations. And we were nobody at the time. And that's when everybody came after us, Nestle, Pepsi, Coke. And we ended up selling 25% of the company to Coke at that point. And then Walmart was the second one to name us emerging beverage category captain, Jack Sinclair, when he was the chief merchant of Walmart. Today, he's the CEO of Sprouts. We launched 16 brands in Sprouts last year. We do so much with Sprouts. We created the foraging program with them. So what it means is, we make recommendations to the retailer, and it's category centric. So many times we recommend brands that we have no economic interest in to the retailer. And nobody's done that. Nobody ever has done that. And maybe nobody ever will do it again, because everybody's going in there trying to sell their brand, right? And we're going in there and saying, look, we saw this going on over here. You should really take a hard look at it. Like in the early days of Liquid Death, who we had no relationship with, we're saying, hey, this company's selling water in a can and it's working. And a lot of the big traditional retailers are like, what? That kind of competitive intel and insights became very valuable to the retailers. And it's a huge, huge responsibility for us. We take it very, very seriously. And then when we are selling our own stuff, we literally take our category captain hat on and say, hey, I've got my LA Libations hat on. I'm going to try to sell you something now. So it's very unique. We kind of stumbled upon it, but it was kind of rooted in that Costco story with Craig Jelnick. And it's something that we hold very dear to our hearts. And it's a huge part of our company.
And now you're expanding into THC, being a category captain in that area as well.
So it's really interesting because, until the government gets out of the way, big traditional retailers are not going to carry THC, but all the retailers are asking us about it. Right. And so I said, I need to become a subject matter expert in this, right? Because these retailers are relying on me. And so we started meeting with all the THC founders, and boy, was that interesting. Very different than, hydration founder. Like, these people it attracts a certain type of person, I guess you could say, and so we just dug into it. And so when the lights do go on and the government does get out of the way, the retailers are going to depend on us to say, who do we bring in? And we know who. We've already kind of kiss the frogs, if you know what I mean. And we know who the princes are, and we know who we're going to make recommendations for. And that's starting to happen right now. We're hearing about big traditional retailers testing in, Minneapolis or Florida, where the laws are a little bit looser. And I think the seal is going to break eventually. There's actually some big moments this week, with legislation.
So, and going back to the accelerator or incubator part of the business, I mean, I know you had some big wins, like with Body Armor and Core Water. Tell me some stories from those deals that you've helped put together.
So I'll tell you about all the wins, but before I do this, I want to tell you, like, we've had so many failures, and we've failed many times. The industry average is a 98% failure rate. Our batting average is much better than that. In fact, it's the best. We've had more exits than anybody, but we don't have all the answers. So I just want to make sure that I always say that, because I don't want to make it sound like everyone that comes to us is going to be the next Body Armor. That's definitely not the case. But having said that, we've had more exits and been involved with more incredible brands than any other company, for sure. Zico was our first one. That was our first brand that gave us equity for services, and it totally changed the course of our company. We sold that to Coke. Core Water was the second one. We sold that to Keurig Dr. Pepper for $526 million. Body Armor is obviously the phenomenon. The final valuation was $8 billion for the total company. We've just, over the years, a lot of founders want to work with us, so there's just incredible brands like Athletic Brewing, and there's a lot of really great brands that we've helped start and, put some top spin on, and we've earned some equity in, and that's really kind of the catalyst for Taste Tomorrow Ventures. So Body Armor, if we would have put $2 million into Body Armor, we would have made $250 million.
Wow.
That's not hyperbole. That's literally math. So your head quickly goes to, man, if I had $2 million, which we didn't have, here's this off-market deal that only we could get access to, let's go raise a fund. And that's what we've done.
Yeah. Well, let's dig in a little more to Body Armor. So I heard you talk about this, which I thought was a fascinating insight, that they had gotten to $100 million in sales without a lot of the big retailers like 7-Eleven, Sam's, Walmart, and Costco. And they all had exclusive deals with Gatorade. And you were able to break that exclusive. So tell me that story.
Yeah. So Mike Rapoli is the GOAT of our industry, right? He built Vitamin Water and sold it for $4 billion, and then doubled the biggest deal ever. He doubled it with Body Armor with $8 billion. And Mike, who is, I like to say, I was raised by wolves in this industry, guys like Mike Rapoli and Lance Collins and Seth Goldman. But, Mike called me and he goes, Danny, I need your help. And I'm like, you need my help? Like, you're the GOAT. Like, what do you need? And he told me that, his guys were going into places, like 3 customers in particular, 7-Eleven, Walmart, and Costco, and they were having zero success. And they had got the company to 100 million without, like, Gatorade's top 3 customers. And he said, look, the buyers tell my guys, this is over my head. There's exclusive deals. Gatorade has it locked, all the space locked up. We can't do it. He goes, if anyone could do this, it's you, Danny. Can you go break that? And I said, I don't know if I can do it, but I know if anyone could do it, I could do it. And so the first one we did was 7-Eleven. And that was actually the easiest because I think this is public now, but I had gotten 7 Ventures to invest in Core Water. And they invested a few $1,000,000 into Core Water. And when we sold to KDP, I got to personally hand them a check for $40 million. And friends for life, right? And so when I went in and said, hey, you guys are missing body armor. This is the next big thing. We were able to get in and break the exclusive. And then we did it at Walmart, and then Costco, we did it. And the brand quickly sprinted to about 1.4 billion in revenue. And Mike sold it.
Yeah. Such a cool story. Well, let's talk a little bit about Molson Coors. So I know that they invested in the company in 2019. What does that relationship look like?
So they're amazing. Could not ask for a better partner. So we were in business with the Coca-Cola company for a long time. And Coke, as it happens in big companies, regimes change. And a new regime came in and said, what are we doing with all these small little investments? What are we doing with this company, LA Libations? Let's get rid of that. And they kind of left us for dead by the side of the road. To be honest, it was a really, really tough time. And so I went around trying to replace them with Keurig Dr. Pepper. And I got to know Bob Gangort really well. And we started a brand with them called Don't Quit, which is really having a moment right now. Started a brand with Anheuser-Busch, actually, but I needed that anchor tenant because Coke was covering a lot of my overhead. And when they went away, I just kept doing it myself. So all the money I'd made in movies and Core Water, we just kept dumping it into the company. And we were about to hit the wall, personal, professional bankruptcy. We were good entrepreneurs. We took it to the edge. And Molson Coors, Pete Marino and Gavin called me and said, hey, we're about to do a big company transformation, and we're going to go beyond beer into non-alc and spirits. But for non-alc, they said, we'd like you to be our partner. And that was in 2019. And it has been really amazing. I can't speak for them, but for us, it's been absolutely amazing. It's been pretty good for them. It has just made us stronger. And I can't say enough good things about Kevin Nitz, who's the head of non-alc over there, Gavin, Raul. They're just great people is the best way to describe it. And I think, I've done a lot of deals with strategics, maybe more than anybody. And what I've learned is you don't do deals with companies. You do deals with people. And the people at Molson have just been amazing.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the Topo Chico deal.
So I had nothing to do with Topo Chico, but I watched from the sidelines. That was owned by a Coke bottler. I did do the Topo Chico hard seltzer deal with Coke and Molson Coors, which was really interesting. So I'll talk about that because I actually did have an impact on that. So, my relationship with Coke is very complex. I worked there for 9 years. They helped finance 4 of my movies. They invested in LA Libations, left us for dead. Literally, you could talk to my therapist about my relationship with Coke. It's complex. But, after we did the Molson deal, Coke actually called me. Matt Hughes called me and said, hey, we're thinking about Topo Chico, doing a hard seltzer with Topo Chico. And he's like, I feel kind of weird asking you that after all we put you through, but, do you think you could kind of broker the deal between Coke and Molson Coors? And I said, yeah, of course. And so we did. That's been a huge success for both companies.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it seems like these days, every non-alc company wants to be in the alcohol space, and every alcohol company, wants to be in the non-alc space. Why do you think that is?
So, in Europe, that's kind of how it is. All around the world, the distributors that carry Coke carry beer and other things. So I think it makes sense. I think eventually we'll probably get there. I think if you look at what Reyes is doing right now, it's insane. I mean, they are one of the largest Coke bottlers, right? And it's separate. It's church and state right now. But, their beer distribution has now got High Noon and Tito's, and those guys aren't slowing down. I mean, they're going for it. I think it's more efficient. I think the blurring of the lines between alc and non-alc has really dissipated. And, I think it's been blazed by, this adult non-out trend. We don't have our Monster and our Red Bull of adult non-out. The jury's out to see who will be those big brands. If the category does what we all think it will, there will be some big, huge multi-billion-dollar brands in that space. They aren't there yet, but all these things are just really blurring. And not only that, like we just launched a protein soda. So you see two categories of protein and soda blurring. You're seeing protein coffee, you're seeing energy and hydration, and so it's funny when you talk to the retailers and you pitch them something like that, they're like, well, where do you want me to put it? Do you want me to put it with hydration or do you want me to put it with energy? And, you're kind of like, we've got to think this through,
Well, let's talk more about Taste Tomorrow Ventures. So, how much has been raised in that fund, and what type of companies are you looking to invest in?
Yeah, so it's a $30 million fund. We did our first close of 15. I think we have like 18 in the bank or something, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're finishing off the rest. We've already made 2 investments. Our first investment is Just Iced Tea with Seth Goldman, who's one of the GOATs. He was the founder of Honest Tea. Our second investment was a brand called Better Sour. It's a candy brand, think of like a healthy Sour Patch Kids for foodies, adults. But it's really got a lot of traction and it's got an incredible founder. There's actually 2 founders, but we've worked before with Bella. She had a brand called Shaka Tea, which we worked with at LA Libations, and we really got to know her and see what an incredible founder she is. And she ended up selling that company. Nobody knows it. It's like the best kept secret. She sold a tea company to a bread company. She sold Shaka Tea to a King's Hawaiian bread company. I made a ton of money and nobody even knows it. Like she's going to win. She will not fail. And so those are the investments that we've made. And Just Iced Tea is it's a home run investment already. Like it's just amazing the traction that they have. And then we're putting more top spin on it with our ecosystem and our relationships with retailers and things like that. So we're feeling really good about those. Our check size is between 500 and 2 million. Mm-hmm. And, what I like to say is, when you look at these brands at an early stage like we do, it's hard to invest in what that looks like because what that looks like is going to change, right? If you look at Body Armor from the day it was started by Lance to the day that Mike Rapoli sold it, it's unrecognizable. If you look at the first version of Celsius, right, like Poppy, right? It was called Mother when she was on Shark Tank. It's unrecognizable. So you're not investing in the brand as it looks like today or the product as it looks like today. You're investing in that founder. The only through line through all that time is the founder. So we are very hyper focused on the founders. We meet with over 500 founders a year at LA Libations. We make it a priority to see everything. And we take every single meeting. So anyone that calls us or hits us up on LinkedIn, they can meet with us. My worst nightmare is having a retailer say, hey, have you heard of this brand? And me not heard of it. Like that's my job. So we take every meeting and we work really hard at that. And you start to really, over the years, you start to see certain things about founders that, are red flags or like green flags, if you know what I mean.
And what's the difference between founders who make it and those who don't make it?
So I get this question more than any other question. And I'll tell you what I think, but what do I know? But I'll tell you what I think. So the founders that I've seen that have made it, Mark Rampolla, Lance Collins, Mike Rapoli, Seth Goldman, there's something that's fascinating about them. They all have these 2 qualities that most people have one or the other, but they don't have both. And the first one is they have to be innovative, right? And they have to think differently and do things differently and be disruptive. There's a lot of people like that are innovative, right? The other thing they have to be is coachable, right? And there's a lot of people that are coachable. But if you're really coachable and you're not innovative, you're not going anywhere. If you're really innovative and you're not coachable and you've never done this before, you're probably going to fail. There's bodies buried all over the place. There's things, no matter how smart you are, you don't know what to do, right? You don't know how to set up your pricing architecture, on day 0. And if you wait till, year 3 to really tune in on that, you could ruin your company. And so there's all these things. And what I found about those founders that I've mentioned, they're for like Mike Rapoli is the GOAT. He's literally the GOAT, but he calls me and says, Danny, can you answer me this? And he's asked me questions after questions, and one question leads to another question, and he's like a sponge and soaks it up. And it's so fascinating because this guy has done so much more than I'll ever do in my life, right? But he's still coachable. And I ask him, like, what, how are you like this? He goes, there's things that that I don't know. Like, so he knows what he doesn't know. So that's just really interesting to find that dynamic of people that have those two qualities, because usually most people have one or the other and not both.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for the companies that you're looking at investing in, what are the other criteria? Are you looking at pre-revenue, post-revenue? Like, what are are there margin considerations? Like, does an attractive investment look like right now?
So I think, there's two ways to really disrupt things. Like when we did Zico, we got involved very, very early with Zico, and there was no coconut water category, right? And we had to educate the consumer on the why of coconut water, and that's hydration. But that took a long, long time for that to happen. And so whenever you have a new ingredient, like colostrum's an ingredient that I'm obsessed with right now. There's no ready to drink beverages yet. Stick around. But like that's a long slog. So there's a lot of consumer education. The other way is just making a huge category that's got a 50-year ingredient legacy problem and disrupting it by making a better for you sports drink, like Body Armor was to Gatorade, right? And so we like to see categories with headwinds. We like to see something that's very disruptive. Like beer, we couldn't invest in beer anyway because we have two retailers that are our LPs in our fund. But I wouldn't invest in beer right now anyway because it's you don't know where it's going, right? Non-alc beer, that's a different story, right? That's a category that's going through the roof. Like athletics, I think up 30% year to date, and beer's down like 4%.
Yeah.
So protein, I think adult non-alc. Things like that. I think categories with headwinds are a big thing, but ultimately it comes down to the founder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell me about a specific brand in the LA Libations universe right now and why you believe in it.
So it's funny, like Netflix, when it started, they were a company that mails DVDs in the mail, right? When you look at Netflix today, it's something completely different. A lot of these beverage companies have similar stories, and Don't Quit's a similar story. So Don't Quit, I started with Jake Steinfeld, Body by Jake. Keurig Dr. Pepper was our first investor pre-revenue, great partner. And we were going to disrupt adult nutrition. We still probably will one day. But we launched it on the first day of COVID. Not only was no one shopping in stores, old people definitely weren't stopping in stores. So we kind of pivoted to active protein, and then we started really getting some traction in SoCal, and now we're scaling that nationwide. But we were the first to market. We literally shipped this week with protein soda. So Don't Quit protein soda. It's a 12-ounce can with 15 grams of protein, 60 calories. Only 1 calorie is not from protein. And there's an incredible team around that. Like Mark French, the CEO, and the team that he has, they don't quit. They are relentless. And there is a really, really bright future for that brand. It's really, really interesting what's going on with that brand.
Yeah, yeah. And so whether people are pitching you for investment or to become part of the accelerator, how is it that you like to be pitched?
I just like to get to know the founder first and foremost, and get a feel. I like to think that I'm a pretty good judge of character. And, there's a lot of dreamers and there's a lot of schemers. And probably neither one of those things are good things when it comes to being a beverage founder. One thing I hate, you're asking what I look for. One thing that's a red flag right away is whatever the brand of the moment is. Like my team's probably meeting with 10 founders this week, and they'll all have, Poppy, we're going to be the next Poppy, and if we get this much of the market, like Poppy, and it's just like, get a little creative. Like, you're not going to be the next Poppy, right? Like, that's such a long road, and that's one of one. So, I like to see people that have a real passion, a real purpose for, the why. Like, why, what is the why for this brand? What is the reason to be for this brand? And if it's financial, it's usually like if you're creating it to make more money, usually those things don't work. You're usually trying to solve a big problem that is for yourself, but a lot of other people share that problem. And that's where the things usually go to the moon.
Yeah. So, do you have any tactical tips for founders who are looking for investment, things that they should do or mistakes to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, you have to really know your business, right? Like it's shocking to me, like when, first of all, one thing that's just dazzling to me is like people, like I've had so many meetings where people are like, I've been dying to meet you and show you my brand and I can't wait to show you. And I'm like, all right. And they put a deck up on the screen and they walk me through the deck and I'm like, well, can I taste it? And they're like, oh, we didn't bring samples. And I'm like, what? Like, you gotta be kidding me. So I think, but that aside, like you just really need to know the unit economics. It's really important. You need to understand that, like when people say like, I'm going to be profitable at 5 million in revenue, red flag. Nobody's profitable at 5 million in revenue. I don't care who you are. And if you are, you're definitely not growing. And who cares? You're a $5 million brand, maybe. So like you need some sort of reality and to understand like I'm probably not going to be profitable until I'm 30, 40, 50 million in revenue, but here's the path to get there and here's what my margin structure looks like, and as we get bigger, this is how my margin structure is going to increase because of all these elements. And you have to really understand the consumer and like once again the why, like why does the consumer want this and need this, what's going to separate this, and you have to have a real vision and a real take.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as your company has grown, I know you've faced several challenges that you've mentioned, but tell me what's the latest for LA Libation and what's the size of the company at this point in terms of employees?
I think we're about 60 employees right now. We were a lot more because we had a merchandising company called Relentless that we started for our own brands. So, like I said, I was a merchandiser and I needed merchandising here in SoCal for our own brands. I wasn't happy with the options out there, so we created our own called Relentless. It kept growing and growing and growing. Poppy and Walmart asked us to do the modern soda set at Walmart nationwide, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not what I planned. So, we had already had a bunch of employees, so we joint ventured that with Advantage Sales and Marketing, which is a big public company, and they're also an LP in my fund. And we have an incredible list of LPs in our fund. So a lot of our employees went to that joint venture and came off our books. But we have a pretty big group here. LA Vibrations is really growing our marketing agency. There's a lot of people in that.
Tell me a little bit about the trends you're seeing. So you have this front row seat to what is happening in retail. What are the most important trends that entrepreneurs should be aware of in this space right now?
Well, I'll tell you like what the retailers are looking at and what they're expanding their space for. And it was a big theme at Beverage Forum. So protein, like hands down, like you're seeing popcorn with protein, pasta sauce with protein. And so there's a lot of blurring of the categories. Protein coffee, like the super coffee guys have a protein coffee. Joy Burst is the one that we're in business with. They have an incredible protein coffee that just launched. Brad just launched it in Costco. So protein, protein, protein. Everyone's trying to get more protein in their lives, including me. I try to get a gram of protein for every pound. I'm 190 pounds. It's really hard to do that. So if things that you're just going to eat or drink in your normal day have protein in them, great. So protein's a big one. Albertsons, Walmart, everyone's expanding their protein space. Adult non-alc as well is everyone's trying to figure it out. Like, where do we put it in the store? Like, what's happening? But there's definitely a trend there. Places like Sprouts and Whole Foods, like it's different in those places. Like in Sprouts, some of the best selling stuff in the store is adult non-alc. That's not the case in big traditional retailers, but usually that's where kind of trends start. So if that down the road starts happening at places like Kroger and Albertsons, it'll be really interesting. So protein, adult non-alc, and then the fourth category of alcohol is fascinating to me. Beatbox, Buzz Balls, and Surfside's amazing what they're doing. And those are just that's a whole new category, right? So
Right.
it's those are kind of the three big bucket trends that I'm seeing.
Okay, awesome. And so what's on the horizon for LA Libations and all of its divisions and other companies?
I can't tell you that. I can't tell you. No, look, we've got big ambitions. We see it as day one. I mean, we're in our 15th year, but you know, is I was talking to someone and they're saying like dude, like you've always worked hard, but like, you're never worked harder than you're working right now. And it was surprising to me because I literally don't feel like I'm working. Like I love this company. I love where we're going. I love where we're headed. And we have some big plans. Beverage Forum has been this incredible thing that the industry totally needed. It's a 30-year-old iconic industry event. We bought it. It was really sleepy. We turned it around. It's can't miss. Literally can't miss. Massively sells out. We sold out of sponsorships 3 months early, so I said no to people for 3 months. So we're launching Beverage Forum Europe in London on October 7th and 8th. Dino and I are headed to Miami on Monday. We're setting up Beverage Forum Latin America, which will be in Miami. So that's one thing that's really interesting. I think the fund, of course, is very interesting. And then, we launched LA Libations as a B2B company. So we launched our first, product with our brand on it, which is so LA Libations water. It's pretty cool. It's got chromatic ink technology, this company we invested in. That when Coors Light mountains turn blue when it's cold, we have that ink on here. So these palm trees turn green
Oh,
when it's
nice.
really cool. But we launched this just in Southern California, and our velocities are like we've done nothing. All we did was put it in the stores.
Wow.
We have a lot of cooler stuff in LA. We've done zero marketing, and like we're onto something massively. And we have a great partner in Niagara on the production side. So I'm really excited about that brand. I'm really excited about Don't Quit. I'm excited about Pretty Tasty, which is a collagen tea. There's so many things I'm excited about.
Yeah, awesome. And for people who are interested in working with you, what's the best way to reach out?
So it depends how they want to work with us. If they want to work with us as a client, the best place to start is with Celeste. So Celeste at lalibations.com. We have a culture of LinkedIn. It kind of drives me crazy. I committed to LinkedIn like a year ago, and I'm like sick of myself posting. I'm I annoy myself, but I post every day. But it works. Like we have so much business coming in through there. So we're very active if someone reaches out to us through LinkedIn, and we just have a very inquisitive culture. This industry moves so fast and there's the founder community, the entrepreneurial energy that comes into beverage is fascinating. There's always something new that you never thought of that's right around the corner. So you have to just be watching everything. So to be honest, we're too easy to find. Like
Yeah, yeah.
we're very accessible.
And if you had one piece of advice to give a budding entrepreneur in this space, what would it be?
So I said this a couple of weeks ago at a conference, but I'll say it again. There's two ways that I answer this question. So the first one is you can be small and you can be hard to do business with, but you can't be both. And so you got to figure out how to be really easy to do business with if you're a small guy. And a lot of these founders aren't. They're just not. And that is a death sentence. And then the other thing is this industry is a blood sport. The failure rate the odds are so against you. So against you. It's so hard. Even for us who have been doing this for a long time, we fail all the time. And it's painful because when you start a brand, it's 5-10 years you're committing to that, and the odds are that you're going to fail. And so when we started the brand Don't Quit is based off of a poem that Jake Steinfeld got when he got cut from his 8th grade basketball team, and it was given to him, and it's called Don't Quit. And I won't tell you the whole poem, but everybody should go look it up because it's inspirational. But the last paragraph says, "Stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit.
Yeah.
Don't quit." And that sums up beverage.
I love that. Well, we usually ask, is there a book or a movie or an online class or some sort of inspiration? But I think that that quote, that poem would be it. So tell me the name of the poem again.
It's just Google "Don't Quit" poem and it'll come up.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's awesome.
I think that's fantastic advice because a lot of people in the industry just don't realize until they're in the trenches just how difficult this business can be.
Yeah, when people come to me and say I'm thinking about starting a beverage brand, I honestly try to talk them out of it, because if there's any chance that you're going to talk them out of it, then they should have never done it in the first place, right? And they need to know what they're getting into because it's hell.
It's hell. But when it works, when everything goes right, it can
It's
be the best
heaven.
thing in the world.
It's heaven.
Straight from hell to heaven. So I think that's a great place for us to leave it. Well, Danny, thank you so much for coming on the Business of Drinks.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for everything you do for the industry. Really appreciate it.
Welcome back to Last Call. It's Erica, and today we're going to be discussing how to avoid mistakes when pitching distributors. So this segment is brought to you by Swig Partners, and we've got Alex Cherniavsky, the managing partner of the company, to help us unpack that topic. So Alex, first let's start out with Swig Partners. Tell us about the work that it does.
Yeah, so our company is a company that helps brands find importers and distributors. So, we're looking for mutually beneficial partnerships. We're looking to get you set up in a new market so you can sell. The goal is for everybody involved to be working together for years to come. We've placed probably, I think we've had 70 plus different clients at this point across all parts of the market. So anything for adults. So adult non-alc through, wine, beer, cider, etc. The only thing we don't yet work with, but might soon, is kind of the CBD world. We're still kind of trying to figure that part of the equation out. But we've kind of helped those brands find new distributors in kind of the hip markets everyone wants to be in, and then also the second and third tier markets where we're seeing a ton of sales. So sometimes we're putting people in markets you maybe don't request off the bat, but you're making a ton of money once you're there. Get you set up for success in new markets that make sense for you.
Awesome. All right. So tell me, what are some of the key mistakes that suppliers make when pitching distributors?
So the first is, not really looking at the markets that you want to be in. Everybody wants to be in New York and Florida and Texas and California and Illinois, right? So everybody's pitching in those markets. Hundreds of people are pitching every day to distributors in those markets. Not everybody can be in those markets. And when you are in those markets, you're a little fish in a really big pond. So you're not even going to sell a ton of product unless you're like the next hot thing. So my advice would be to start in the B and C tier markets, or even the markets that have enough room. So like DC, Maryland, Virginia, I wouldn't really even consider that a B market, but it's a market that never slows down, is constantly buying, is constantly kind of marching on. We're seeing good sales. All of our clients that have been placed there, and most of them have been placed there, really do well and see reorders and are happy. And it's really just a very good market. New York is hit or miss. Florida is hit or miss. Texas, hit or miss. It's kind of hard to break into those markets, and it's hard to be successful once you're there. So I think tampering your expectations, thinking about the right places to reach out to first is really important. From there, you want to make sure that you have a kind of short and to the point outreach message, because like I just said, hundreds of people are reaching out to these people, even in the B markets, right? So you want to have an abbreviated product information sheet. So everybody's got these glossy brochures that have all of these beautiful pictures and all of this great information. And those things are wonderful once you've started the conversation, but you want one page. You want something really simple, easy to read, that covers all of the things that are most important to these distributors so they can look at it, think, is this right for us? Yes, no, and then move on. So if it's yes, you hear right back from them. If it's no, whatever. But if you send them this big thing to read, they're not reading it at all. So they're going to skip right past you, and you're not even going to get your foot in the door. So I think it's really important to put that together and to be really successful and intentional with kind of what you're doing with that. So easy to read. What is the product? What does it cost? You could include, where is it warehoused? Because that often comes up pretty quickly in decision making. And you can include, if you've won a ton of awards, include that. If there's something special about you, you're vegan, you're biodynamic, whatever it is, include that too. People care about those things, and they base their purchasing decisions about, on those categories. So if you're part of a category, let them know. It's really important to kind of share that information, but share it in a way that is easy to read and quick and to the point.
Yeah, definitely. Help contextualize the brand as quickly as possible. And beyond that very strong one sheet, what else does a strong pitch strategy encompass?
Yeah, so when we do it with Swig Partners, because that's kind of what I do day in and day out, we really look to reach out to the right person at the company. So you've got to really kind of figure out who that is. And that's kind of the first step. So sometimes you can find that out from the website. You can talk to friends who already work with a distributor that you want to work with, have them make an introduction. Having a warm kind of handshake introduction really does go a long way. So if you know somebody who works with a distributor you want to work with, have them make that introduction rather than just emailing like info at wherever, right? Sometimes you get a response with info at whatever, but it's really rare. And you really want to be emailing a real human who's opening up their email box and is kind of excited about new things. So when possible, figure out who that person is who you need to talk to. You really want to kind of approach it that way. And then you want to be short and to the point in your email body, right? Because you'll attach that short one sheet, but you want to kind of cover the important points. So in your email subject line, talk about what you are and kind of what you're targeting. So, X brand, who is like the fastest growing limoncello, is looking for a distributor in X market. And then you've covered it. You've been short. They know what it is. They know what you're there to say. And then in your email, if you just won an award, say, hi, I'm whoever from this brand. We recently won XYZ awards. Our product is this thing. If you'd like to taste samples or you want to talk more, reach back out to me. Make it very short. You don't want a couple of sentences. Sum up who you are, sum up what makes you special, sum up how to get in touch, and then say for more information, read this attachment or whatever it is. You want to keep it really, you want them to be able to read it in under a couple of minutes, and the faster the better, I think is, you don't want to waste anybody's time, and everybody is busy and has a lot on their plate these days and wears a lot of hats. Buyers aren't just buying, they're doing other stuff. And so you want to really kind of catch their attention and help them make that decision quickly.
And what's the best way to reach out? Do you think email, is it worth trying to call? Is it worth, targeting people at trade shows for an IRL, meeting point? What's the best way to connect with people at distributors?
I think email can be tremendously successful as long as you're emailing the right person. I think some of the trade shows can be very successful as well, provided they're actually attended by the kinds of people who will be making those purchasing decisions. A lot of them aren't. A lot of larger trade associations and things like that will put on various traveling trade shows, often from people from European countries, and they'll get to the U.S. and they'll be at this trade show, and it'll be attended by mostly like restaurant buyers, but you don't have a distributor yet. So you really want to kind of vet what these trade shows you're going to are and who the key people who are going to be there are, and then target those choices to the right places. So, you don't want to go to the one that's just going to be restaurant buyers because you aren't available for sale. They're going to get excited, and then you're not going to be able to sell your product anyway. And you've spent the thousands of dollars to get there and thousands of dollars to sign up. You want to go to one that's attended by trade professionals, by people who are looking to buy as a distributor, people who are looking to buy as an importer, or where you can make those kinds of kind of networking connections. So figure out what your goal is for that event. And, if your goal is to meet other people at the same level as you, doing the same things as you, go to any of them, right? Because you're gonna meet those people there. If your goal is to find a distributor, you really have to go to one that's attended by distributors, where distributors are kind of actively shopping. And often they're not actively shopping at those things. So you really have to be intentional in your choices. Sometimes phone calls work, but I would say more as like a follow-up thing, because like I said, people are really busy. They're thinking about, they're doing things all over the place. And sometimes you can kind of follow up with a phone call. But I think that, email ends up working best because it's on their time and their schedule. A lot of people from, all over the world really sometimes think that making an in-person appointment or going to visit in person is really key and really important. And I think that unless that's requested by the distributor as something that they're really desiring, I would not do that. I think that, asking somebody who has not already committed to work with your product to set aside an hour of their day or more to kind of chat with you is not awesome. It's a little bit rude, and it's a little bit like you take I'm much more important than you, and I don't really have respect for your time. And I think you want to kind of consider that these people have a lot going on. They're being pitched by a ton of people. If they were going to take a meeting with every single person who pitches to them, they would have no time to do anything else. And then no time to sell your product. Let's say they bring you in. If they're meeting with other people all day, they don't have time to focus on you. So you really want them to be able to focus on the brands that they have in-house and focus on potentially wanting to work with you. You really want to frame your approach as someone who is great to work with, because while the purchasing decision is partially made on what the product is and what the price is and kind of salability and market, it's also a business of relationships. And if they don't like you and they don't want to work with you, they'll just go work with the other thing that's kind of like the thing you already make, right? They'll work with something else in category. So you want to be somebody that they want to work with in addition to having an awesome product. So it's a kind of a matter of finding that balance. You really want to be in person when it's appropriate. And yes, once they've tasted your product and they're excited about it and you want to move forward, yes, arrange an in-person visit, arrange a virtual visit. But in those kind of first moments where you're reaching out and kind of getting to know each other, I think that, sending an email, or if they give you a number to text, or if you call and leave a message on a voicemail, like those kinds of little touch points are typically enough to get the conversation going. And then you can kind of follow their lead as to what makes sense next. So whether it's a phone call or a video call or in person if you're nearby, whatever it is, I think you really have to kind of be respectful of everybody's time, just like they'll be respectful of your time. You want them to be respectful. You want to be respectful of theirs as well.
Yeah. And last questions. How often is too often to follow up, accompanied by, is there a best time of the year to pitch?
Okay, so the economy now is very different, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the US right now. So things are a little bit upside down, but in a traditional normal year, most companies are buying for a spring launch and a fall launch. So you're looking to kind of get ahead of that. So what does ahead of that mean? It really varies. So, most people are planning, let's say 6 months ahead. So they're looking to purchase for spring in like next month, like August, September till, early spring. So they're looking during that period and making their plans. If they're looking to purchase for fall, they're starting to look at the beginning of the year and like January, they're thinking about it, they're tasting stuff, and then they're going to purchase at the end of the summer for that kind of fall launch. So typically people are running on those two calendars. Summer is the slowest time for most people across the US, regardless of whatever it is. Also, it's a time of travel and visiting people you already work with, and all sorts of other things happen. So not a lot of purchasing is happening in summer. And then some purchasing happens in winter, and some people are buying non-alcoholic stuff for dry January, and you're seeing some of that happening as well. But for the most part, really kind of spring and kind of the end of the year are really your big sales times. So you're looking to pitch usually like 6 months ahead of time. So, the people are looking year round, they're shopping year round, they're tasting year round, but you're gonna look to expect the most purchases kind of in that late winter, early spring, or late summer, early fall kind of purchasing calendar when you're kind of making those plans. And to the other question about how often you should follow up with your distributor contacts, I typically do 7 to 9 businesses from the first contact as kind of an initial follow-up. And then from there, it's every 2 weeks to a month, depending upon the distributor or depending upon if they get back to me. So if they get back to me and say, we're not buying anything right now, check back in July, check back in November, check back whenever that date is, I put it in my calendar. And then I reach back out when they say that is the right time to reach out. And then sometimes it's still not the right time. Sometimes it is the right time. You really kind of want to keep track of that, because sometimes you'll meet a great partner now, but they're not ready to buy now. And they're ready to buy in 6 months, and you've kind of planted the seed. You've kind of done a little bit of the groundwork there. And then when the time comes, they're ready to move forward. So follow up on their schedule. I wouldn't follow up weekly. I wouldn't expect to get answers right away for a lot of things. I wouldn't expect for people to taste samples the moment they're delivered. Give people time give people the kind of space to make those decisions and kind of think about what they're looking to do. But yeah, I would say, 10 business days to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. I think, once or twice a month is probably as much as you're going to want to reach out to people. They're doing other stuff, and you're going to remind them that you reached out, and that's important. But you also want to, do it as little as you can to be effective, and still kind of get the point across.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fantastic advice. Thank you, Alex, so much for joining us. And thanks to our listeners for listening to Business of Drinks. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, and tap the notification button so you're the first to know when a new episode drops. And help us spread the word. Click the star ratings and share on social. It really does help us find new listeners. And finally, if there's something you'd like us to talk about on the podcast, let us know. We're at podcast@businessofdrinks.com, or you can reach out on LinkedIn or Instagram. We want to hear from you, and we really do respond to messages. See you next time.